I don't often abide the heterosexuals, but Krav and Ragnar partner commanders are my favorite deck I've ever built, and we have yet to receive an alternate art where they're both male as God intended. So I'm forced to play with the heteros today, and I'm going to explain my approach to them. Ragnar is a 6-drop white flying angel with an end-step trigger to make 2 white warrior tokens, but we only get that trigger if we gained life that turn. But notable about the trigger is we get it every end step, not just on our end step, and we can help gain life every turn by activating our other partner, Krav. This 5-drop black demon 3/3 has an activated ability for 1 black mana where we can sacrifice any number of creatures and we'll draw cards, put +1/+1 counters on Krav, and gain life proportionate to the amount of creatures we sacrifice. And this whole activated ability, for a single 1 black mana, that's what the whole deck is based on. So, the game plan for Straight Pride is to gain life on every turn. It doesn't matter how much life, just so long as we gain life so we can make the 2 dudes off Ragna. And then we're going to continually sacrifice those dudes to our boy Krav over here for card advantage so that we can draw into our win cons and turn these death triggers into the end of the game. This is the deck that I actually learned how to play Magic on. This is the deck that taught me how important it is to respond to what's happening on the battlefield and to plan ahead. And it brings me tremendous joy to refer to it as my Straight Pride deck to the confusion of everybody who isn't me. So our plan for the Straight agenda is what's known as an Aristocrat strategy, where we're going to be sacrificing our creature tokens for value, like card advantage, and also death triggers, so that we can turn those death triggers into a win con to kill our opponents. And this whole deck revolves around Krav's activated ability. For a single black mana, we can sacrifice any number of our creatures, draw that many cards, and gain that much life. We're not super concerned about the +1/+1 counters on Krav for my build, because this deck is more about leaning back and responding with Krav's activated ability. Our creatures are not for attacking. Our creatures are for blocking, activating, and sacrificing. But we gotta force down our vegetables of removal, card advantage, and ramp first. And we're gonna give ramp priority today, because I gotta tell you something really important. Come closer. You have 2 6-mana commanders. I know Krav says 5 mana, but you are not to put Krav on the battlefield without at least 1 singular black mana to activate him. Because if there's a board wipe or some other awful nonsense, maybe like a farewell or a mass exile spell, you can activate Krav and get a little bit of advantage and put some cards in your hand at the very least before your board gets emptied. So the best piece of ramp I found for this deck is the Relic of Legends from Dominaria United. This uncommon 3-drop mana rock can tap for any color, which can be black, which is the color we care about in this deck, but it can also let you tap your creatures to add black mana too. And because we have 2 legendaries that aren't for attacking, they're just for activating, triggering, and sacrificing, we can use our commanders for mana, and because we only really need that 1 black mana to have a really impactful response in this deck, Relic of Legends can do that on any legendary creature. Highly recommend the Relic of Legends. This thing is so fucking good. Another rock I love for this deck is Crowded Crypt. This mono black rock can tap for black, but also has death triggers to get counters. We can later pay 6 mana and get rid of our rock and make as many zombies as we have counters on the rock. And if we get enough tokens at the end of the game, once we have our win con death trigger creatures out, it can often be enough to close it out. And rounding out our 3-drop rocks is a white 3-drop rock, but this thing puts counters on it when we activate it, and we can later get rid of this rock to return some stuff from our graveyard proportionate to the amount of counters on it. And because our win cons are low drop creatures with death triggers stapled to them, this can help us get back our important game pieces to close out a game. We're also going to include an Oketra's and a Bantu's Monument. These things only really help you cast creatures, and they're color restricted on how they help you. But they both trigger whenever you cast a creature spell, and we have a bunch of creatures in this deck. And the white one makes tokens, and the black one can gain you life during your turn. But the best piece of ramp on our list is this 4-drop black pirate called Pitiless Plunderer. This thing makes a treasure whenever one of our creatures dies, and because Krav's activated ability costs a singular black mana, it's almost making us mana positive. And because Krav's activated ability fills our hands, and if we're sacrificing multiple tokens, we're going to make multiple treasures, this thing can often just be the gateway to the end of the game, because it makes mana, Krav fills our hands, we keep casting things out, and we can close it out so easily with a Pitiless Plunderer. And moving on to removal, we're going to start ourselves off with a lethal scheme. I really enjoy a lethal scheme because it can also provide us a little bit of card advantage, can help us fill our graveyard if that's a thing we're looking to do, and it's instant speed removal, and it can be free if your creatures help cast it, and you can use your black creatures to cast the black pips. Lethal scheme is amazing. Highly recommend a lethal scheme. And the rest of the removal I'm running in this deck is just exile effects in white that are instant speed. We got some Orzhov ones in there too. Instant speed, white exile simply is the best removal in Commander, in my opinion. Highly recommend. Get you some Swords of Plowshares, get yourself a Path to Exile. Okay, and the last vegetable we gotta force down before we can get to the fun cards is card advantage or card draw. And because cross-activated ability is what we're usually gonna be filling our hands with, we're a little light on card draw, which is why I like that lethal scheme, because it can do card advantage things. And along those lines, I also recommend a Laron of the Third Path. This legendary 3-drop from the Brothers' War can blow up an artifact or enchantment when it enters, and then it can do group huggy card draw things while it hangs out on the table. And another thing I really enjoy about Laron is its low CMC, because maybe we'll want to sacrifice Laron to Krav for some death triggers, and we can easily put Laron back on the battlefield and get that ETB to remove more permanents. Highly recommend a Laron of the Third Path. And because we're running a lot of legendary creatures in these colors, I run a Kenris Royal Funeral. It can do the card advantage things if you can exile some legendaries from your graveyard, but if you can get 2 legendaries from your graveyard, it can also do some cost reduction for our commanders, of which are kind of pricey. We got 6 and 5, that's a lot. Except Krav is a 6-mana commander. Don't forget it. You need that black mana to activate him. And the last card on my card advantage list I want to tell you about is this Braid's Arisen Nightmare from Dominaria United. This thing is like a little black Rhystic Study. It forces you to sacrifice a permanent at your end step, and then your opponents have the option to sacrifice a permanent that shares a type with it, but if they don't, they lose 2 life, and we draw a card for everybody who ain't sacrificed something this way. This is amazing, especially because Braid says we can sacrifice a land. And my favorite synergy with Braid's Arisen Nightmare is sacrificing this white land called Flagstones of Tarkir because it can replace itself. And your opponents aren't likely to sacrifice a land. Alright, and with the vegetables out of the way, we can get onto the cards that we came here to play. And we're going to start with Regna's side of the deck first. Regna says that we can make 2 dudes at every end step as long as we gained life during that turn. And the Soul Sisters are a really efficient way to do this. They are 2 little 1-drop mono-white ladies that say that we gain a life whenever a creature enters the battlefield. The creature doesn't have to enter our side of the battlefield for us to gain that life. So these ladies and their cousin, Ariog Champion, are a great way to gain life every turn. But if we want to gain life on our opponent's turns and make them really sad, we can run the 1-drop, the Authority of the Consuls. This 1-drop in white will gain us a life whenever a creature enters on their side of the battlefield. It won't trigger for our creatures, but it will make their creatures enter tap, completely negating haste and reducing the amount that they're able to block. This thing will draw some removal. But what if our opponents aren't playing creatures? That's not really a problem. We can also run this Combo Chief of Allocation from Kaladesh, and this thing will hurt them for 2 life while gaining us 2 whenever they cast something that isn't a creature. Heads up though, people don't like seeing this and they will remove it. We can't just rely on Regna for all our token production. So we're going to go over token production next. And I think a great place to start with that is this Oltec Matter Weaver. This thing's really cool because whenever we cast a creature spell, we get to make a little 1/1 artifact creature gnome, or we get to make a copy of a different artifact creature token that we control. This thing's really cool. It's going to give us more and more value throughout the game as we keep casting creatures. I really enjoy this thing. And functioning just like the Oltec Matter Weaver, but for non-creature spells, we got this Monastery Mentor originally printed in one of the Tarkir blocks. This thing's really cool because it can help us generate tokens on our opponent's turns when we use our interaction and instant speed removal. Highly recommend a Monastery Mentor. Comball, the Thunder Junction one this time, is really great at making complex tokens of whatever tokens our opponents are making. And it can also gain us life during our turn, because if we make a token during an opponent's turn, they're going to get drained for 1, and we're going to get that life gain trigger. Comball, Thunder Junction version, really good for this deck. Lord Skitter is a 3-drop mono-black rat that will make us a rat that can't block every turn at the beginning of combat. I really enjoy Lord Skitter. He feels like a Bitter Blossom that doesn't make usable blockers, but he does make great sacrifice fodder, and he does do graveyard hate. This deck wins by sacrificing a large amount of tokens all at once, and Endrick Star is a great way for us to get a smattering of tokens every time we cast a creature spell. We just want to be wary not to go over 7 Thralls off of Endrick, or else we're going to lose him. Another way to make a bunch of dudes all at once is Thalice Reverent Medium, and because Thalice is written like Regna, caring about the end step, not just our end step, every end step, Thalice can help improve our board every single turn, as long as we've already made tokens that turn. Will of the Mardu is a 3-drop mono-white instant that was dropped in the Mardu precon from Dragonstorm Tarkir, and I love this thing, because not only can it drop a bunch of men onto the battlefield all at once at instant speed, it can also be removal on the burn spell part of it. And because we have 2 commanders, we're usually always going to be casting both halves of the spell. But the best token producer in this deck by far is Call the Coppercoats. This 3-drop mono-white instant can make a bunch of dudes proportionate to the amount of creatures your opponent controls, but if you pay more mana into it, you get to pick more opponents and make more dudes. It's amazing. If you pay 7 mana, you just make a 1/1 for each creature on the battlefield you don't control. And lastly, we're moving on to our win cons. Our win cons in our Aristocrats strategy are cards that say whenever a creature we control dies, we get to hurt somebody a little bit. And some of my favorite ways to hurt somebody a little bit are with Blood Artist and Falcon Wraith Noble. These things say that whenever a creature on the board dies, doesn't have to be our creature, we get to drain someone for 1 and we gain 1. So these guys, early game, can also help us get those life gain triggers that will help Regna make guys, but just having a few of these on the battlefield can easily become lethal for some low life players. But the real game enders in this deck are creatures and things that say that whenever one of our things die, all of our opponents get hurt a little bit. Things like Zula Port Cutthroat, Marionette Apprentice, and Bastion of Remembrance. These things are really cool, especially the Apprentice and the Bastion of Remembrance, because they will each make us a token when they enter. But by far the most dangerous creature in our deck is a common 2/3 flying bat from Lord of the Rings. Mirkwood Bats says that whenever we make or sacrifice a creature, we make our opponents each lose 1 life. It's crazy, and when we're making a bunch of tokens and sacrificing them on the same turn, the Mirkwood Bat can often just close out the game on the spot. Funeral Room, the room enchantment from Duskmourn, has the death trigger we're looking for on the 3 mana side, but the 8 mana side is just a mass recursion spell, and that's really impactful for us, because if we want to close out the game, we can sacrifice our entire board, pay the 8 mana to unlock the 8 side of the room, and then put our entire board back and do it again. And that's probably enough to close out a game. But my favorite game ender in this deck is this background enchantment from Baldur's Gate called Agent of the Iron Throne. It gives our commanders the death triggers we're looking for to close out a game. And because we have 2 commanders, it's going to give the ability to both of them. So if we have both our commanders on the battlefield when the Agent of the Iron Throne hits it, both of our commanders become win cons. Alright, we discussed the straight agenda, how we plan to make a bunch of dudes and sacrifice them all at once so that we can win off the death triggers. But if our win cons get removed, we need to have a way to slam them back onto the battlefield so that we can close out a game. And for those reasons, I really enjoy a Savine's Reclamation. This 3-drop mono-white sorcery can put back a permanent with 3 CMC or less back onto the battlefield, and if we flash it back later for 5 mana, it can take 2 of those permanents and put them right back on the battlefield. And for these reasons, I also really enjoy running Sun Titan in this deck. It is an ETB and an attack trigger, and Sun Titan's the only boy in my deck who's going to be attacking, because he can help put back our win con effects onto the battlefield when they hit the graveyard. Another piece of recursion I really enjoy in this deck is Dread Return. This common for 4 mana in black can return a creature from our graveyard to the battlefield, but we can flash it back later by sacrificing 3 tokens, gaining us some death triggers in the process. And that's my approach to the straight agenda. I want to thank you guys so much for making it to the end of the video. I really appreciate it. If you had a good time, maybe leave me a comment or a like. And if you would like to receive a forehead kiss, you can now put your forehead on the glass. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble about my favorite deck and my favorite cards in it. I really appreciate it. If you want to see or test this deck on Moxfield, check out the Moxfield link to the deck below. You can also play this deck on Spell Table for free, and I have a tutorial video somewhere on this channel that will teach you how to do that. Thank you so much for watching. Like and follow for more bigger, gayer magic. And a very special thank you to my patrons ones who help me make joyous nonsense for gay nerds in the Magic the Gathering community. I couldn't do this without you guys. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for helping make my life easier.